All right, welcome everyone to the OnCourt OffCourt Game Changers number 3. I have the pleasure of being joined by Joe and Kalindi Dinoffer, the founder and the CMO for OnCourt OffCourt. And so this has been a really great series that we've been doing. We're moving into number 3. We've really had a lot of fun doing this, and I'm excited to do it again with you, Joe and Kalindi. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Billy. It's great to be here. And yeah, we've been having so much fun with the last two. I feel like it's nice to have a space just to chat openly and ideas and stories and tips. And yeah, excited to see what today will bring.
Yeah, and I'm always
Yeah.
and I'm reminded, because I know I say this a lot, but I've had the great pleasure of working with both of you for the last 5+ years. And I've always, as the more I get to know the backstories and the personality and the individuals in the company, I'm always just wowed by wow, there's just so much depth and interesting aspects to the company, to the aspirations, not just in impacting tennis and pickleball, but so many different areas and the backstories between how the products came. And so I really love these opportunities, because it gets to go a little deeper into hear kind of the heart and the backstories for why OnCourt OffCourt is doing what it's doing. And I think that's a really great thing to share with the world. Cool. So let's start off, Joe. I would love to just, have you again share a little bit of, maybe a coaching story, your just experience and history in the game and with product development and just so many different aspects is so intriguing. But I would love to hear, maybe from you, just another interesting coaching story, something that you have that you haven't shared yet, a little backstory, a little kind of, get a chance to see a little bit behind the scenes with Joe. And you have anything in mind to share?
Well, here's a go-to story that I've told a few times, but I'm not sure here. I was watching a lesson in Hawaii, and the coach kept telling the woman to watch the ball, right? So that's a common phrase, in tennis, it's always said there are 3 instructions that are overused: watch the ball, bend your knees, and rack it back. There used to be a joke that said, rack it back, bend your knees, that'll be $20, please. It's going back 40, 50 years, because it was repeated over and over again. Anyway, the woman kept getting told by the coach, watch the ball hit the strings, which is, we know that happens too fast. It's not even possible. And after like 5, 6, 7 times, and she's shanking and hitting off center and then hitting one good one and so forth. And then she just throws down her racket in frustration, says, damn it, I am watching the ball. And no doubt she was, right? But there was more going on. It's timing, there's a moving ball, might have been windy that day, she may have been off balance and so forth. So I read a long retirement letter to about 100 international master pros with the Professional Tennis Registry. His name is Richard Verborn. And at the very end, he said one word has always stood out for him in his coaching career. And he's well known internationally. And he's very scientific based. And he said that word, that 3-letter word, is why. And I thought it was very profound, because why expands itself throughout our whole lives, as we all know. And why is this happening the way it is? And is there a better way? Why is my behavior like this? And can it be different? Why am I reacting this way? And can it be, why am I coaching this way? Why am I parenting this way? Why am I all of these things? So I thought that was really a good one, and resonated with me, because I've always asked that question. What can we do better? Why is this person struggling? What can we do differently? So today is going to be about sharing the why do we keep doing certain things the same way over and over and over again, that we're creatures of habit. And, we'll take it from there. I always follow your lead on these talks, Billy.
Well, actually, I love that because you said the creature of habit. So what would you say, and I know I'm just throwing this out at you. What are the top 2 or 3 negative habits that you see players engage in? And what would be maybe 2 or 3 of the most positive habits that you see, like when the people are operating out of these things, almost just kind of leads to things being more difficult over time, versus when people are having these types of habits, they're just almost like the wind on their back, if you will, in their progress as athletes, or maybe even people in general. What would you say are those kind of maybe 3 negative and 3 positive habits that you see people fall into?
Nice, easy questions you're asking this morning.
Okay.
So the first one, I think, is tension. People grip out of anxiety, and they feel like they need strength in order to hit a ball, whether it's a tennis ball or a baseball or a pickleball or whatever it might be, or table tennis. They think that they need power to hit the ball harder, when in fact, it's the opposite. It's relaxation of the joints, like hinges on a door, like a well-oiled door or a barn door that's really rusty and you got to really push to close or open. So you want relaxation. So a positive thing would be relaxation, right? Not so much that your racket goes flying across the net, but a negative thing would be gripping too tight. So how that is relative to someone's perception on a scale of 1 to 10. Anything above a 5 is problematic. And if you can get down to a 1 or a 2, really relaxing your hand, whether it's on the grip, you can experiment with dropping 1 finger or 2 fingers and just really relaxing and swinging. You may lose a little control at first, but if you can stay in a 1 or 2, you'll be feeling at least like the pros do it. Another big mistake is that big lesson, that people take all the time is racket back. So the reaction is when the ball comes, they take their racket back. But as often as it is appropriate to take your racket back, it's also appropriate not to take a full swing very often, quite often as well. So for example, if you see a ball coming and you're programmed racket back and you're at the net, the ball's coming faster and you have less time, so you take your racket back, and then you see people just turning their head because the ball's gone by them faster than they can react. So that would be the second one. And I would say that the third one is, while you're hitting, getting focused or thinking about your swing and your technique. So I worked with Peter Burwash, who passed away a few months ago from this podcast date, sadly. But I worked with Peter for 10 years, and he used to use the result as a guideline for what to do. For example, if somebody is hitting too short in the court, in a tennis court or a pickleball for that matter, then they can increase their ball arc and it'll go deeper. That's an example. That's result orientation. They can also hit harder, but that increases risk. So if they get in a rhythm that's suitable for them. Everyone has their comfort rhythm of how fast they swing, how hard they hit the ball, all of that. To improve, obviously, you have to be uncomfortable and allow yourself to make mistakes. But for people finding that zone of comfort where they're hitting and they can sustain a rally of 10 balls in a row, those people can just make adjustments. So when you think about your swing, whether it's how far to take it back or all that, that would be intrinsic and it creates tension. And when you're playing, you want to relax and focus on where the ball is bouncing and what it's doing to your opponent, which is more important. When you're practicing, yes, you can think about your technique a little bit. That's why we've always advocated even practicing in front of a mirror. If you're going to make technique corrections without the pressure of play. People make the mistake of trying to change their technique while they're playing matches or sets, which just does not go together.
yeah, the added pressure, right? And then you're going in and out. You're like, well, I gotta go back to what I know works, and then here and there, and yeah. Well, even
Yeah,
as
it's
when you wrote, I
really
wrote
hard.
down the word tension because when you wrote that, it kind of stood out to me because I was like, wow, that definitely applies to a lot more than just tennis and pickleball and table tennis. And I mean, you think about the other aspects just of
Yes,
our life.
sports are often used
Yep.
as a metaphor for life.
Yep. And that really stood
Very
out to
much
me.
so.
You think about those moments where maybe insecurity, fear, and doubt are overwhelming you. What do? You just in life, you grip a little harder, and it tends to get worse the more that you try to squeeze on life. And there's something that happens in that place of relaxation in relationships and in work and so on, and the flow and the peace that comes in that area. And obviously, Kalindi, you're going to have an opportunity to share some mindfulness later, which I think is really aligned to that. So yeah, no,
Yeah, absolutely. Tension and anxiety have a purpose, but they don't go too well together with physical movement. That's for sure.
yep.
And if you're just carrying that 24/7, obviously we all know you're going to have physical and mental problems and emotional problems because of it. So as you said, it's that balance, right?
Yeah, and
I mean, in tennis and pickleball are really such great, like it is like a playground of life or any sport. But I feel like especially like a lot of the racket and paddle sports where it's either just you or you with a partner or your doubles partner, there's like something I think extra special about those. Of course, team sports, you have different lessons, but when it's just you or you and a partner, it's like, wow, that's really a great playground of life, because often it is just, you, or if you're, a friendship or business partnership or relationship, you have to figure out how you can be in a relaxed flow state while, executing whatever shots or things in life that you want to do. And, you were using more tennis examples, Joe, but I was just thinking how all of those examples you just listed apply perfectly for pickleball too. I mean, even more so the, paddle back idea, because
Exactly.
in pickleball, it's all smaller and you actually want to have the compact backswing is even more important. And, of course you need enough grip tension to hold on to the paddle or the racket, but you need to be relaxed or you're going to have, all sorts of, I just had someone email me earlier today saying she, has a lot of elbow pain. And she played tennis and now she's switched to pickleball, and she's found pickleball has been even harder because there's a lot more wrist action, which I've even experienced in playing both, because sometimes the movement, tennis is a little more fluid, pickleball can be a little bit more reactive and jerkier movement. So like you really need to consciously work on relaxing so that you can adapt to those different situations and have, fluid.
There's such, I'll just say that, Kalindi, you triggered me. Tennis, the intermediate player in tennis hitting about a 40 mile per hour ball, baseline to baseline is a 2-second lapse of time. In pickleball, it's 1 second. The court is smaller.
Yeah.
And it's very fast, so you got to react to the ball. You have to judge. There is a lot of inherent tension, if you will, to get into that flow state. So there are all sorts of challenges, and they do relate to life in general. So for the players listening, you got to rush out the door. You're late for a meeting. What do you do? How do you drive your car?
Yep. So actually, Kalindi, I want to ask you the same question I asked Joe, but maybe from a lifestyle perspective, especially like a wellness and mindfulness perspective. What would you say are 3 negative and 3 or positive, or 2 or 3, whatever comes up, but just certain lifestyle or mindfulness type habits that we get into? Kind of Joe just mentioned, right? The rushing and the this and that. Like what are those types of habits that you see that really then translate in life, but also on the court, and how we play both, maybe more from a wellness perspective?
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind is just not being in the present moment. I think we think for granted, well, of course I'm in the present moment, like where else would I be? Well, you should be there, but I'll kind of ask you guys, and by extension, everyone who's going to be watching this, have you ever driven somewhere and then you're at your destination and did you actually recall how you got there?
Yeah.
I mean, I can raise
Very
my hand. I've been
guilty.
guilty of that. And
Very guilty.
yeah, I love to give that example because it's also like, whoa, that sounds unsafe if you don't remember how you got somewhere, because you clearly weren't focused on driving if you were thinking about other things in the, past and the future. And our minds are very wired to go into worrying about the past, thinking about the past, worrying about the future, thinking about the future. It's like we want to be anywhere but the present moment. And that's what mindfulness, that practice, is all about. It's about noticing when your mind is going off somewhere else and bringing it back to this moment. And that's of course super applicable in all areas of life, as well as any sports, tennis, pickleball, anything else, because if you're that's why it can be, the sports can be such a great training ground for mindfulness, because you really have to focus on hitting the ball. That's your present moment. That's what's happening next. If you don't, you're probably not going to hit an ideal shot, but it's very tempting to be like, oh man, you're still thinking about that shot you missed in the last point. You're worried about, oh no, what if I don't win this point? Then we're going to be behind. It's, the mind.
All sorts of things. And interesting, if I might interject, good points, Kalindi, is I don't know how many car accidents there are in the United States or worldwide every year, right? But I'm sure it's millions, assuming, understanding. I believe some years ago, there were 50,000 road deaths in the US a year, but I don't know the statistics. But you can understand that pretty much all of them were because people were not focused on what they were doing. And so the consequences, luckily, in tennis or pickleball, are you just lose a point, if you space out and your mind drifts. If you're driving a car, it's much more dangerous. If you're boxing, like you're in here, you space out for a second and you're on the mat. You're out for the count. So tennis and pickleball, at least, they teach us, but they teach us in a much more mild way than other things we could do in life. So we can take it as a training ground. Like we've showed that sweet spot trainer, so we get immediate feedback of whether we're hitting more in the center of the racket or paddle or along the outside. And that gives us feedback. And we're going to talk, I think, about a couple of aids, which I want to get into the whys of it, the whys of each one, like why they're important and what to look for when you're warming up with an opponent, whether it's pickleball or tennis, to see how you can exploit the person that has the problems that we're going to identify. So should be interesting.
Yeah, that's good.
I do have a couple more ones that I can share.
Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. I'm excited to hear what you have to share about that. I think that'll be a really, really great next topic. So the couple of others that come to mind, and this one's a little bit of a preview of the exercise that I was going to take us through later on in this webinar, is, I don't know if anyone else has had the experience of like a self-critical voice on your shoulder that like tells you like mean things about yourself. It's like, oh man, like, I don't know, I'm the only one that has that. And then there's sometimes a much smaller voice trying to like tell that voice to be quiet. So basically it's the self-critical voice that we all seem to, many people have. And that can be really challenging because, of course it's good to learn from. If you made a mistake, you want to take corrective action and improve. And there might be a moment of, frustration or upset, but if that self-critical voice turns into like a, monologue of negativity in your head, that's not going to help you in life or on the court. And so it's really, that's where like the mindful self-compassion piece that I really feel like completes the mindfulness picture, because it's about working on identifying not just when we're not, when we left the present moment, but what that voice is like, and can we shift it to be a little bit nicer to ourselves? Can we treat ourselves like we would a dear friend, a loved one? Like, chances are you probably don't just go on rants against your friends and partners about like what awful people they are. I mean, or if you do, I bet they would like take it up with you and be like, hey, like, you're not a good friend. So we need to work on being good friends to ourselves. And the exercise we're going to do will give a little bit of a practice of how to do that. And just the last one that comes to mind has to do with the breath and breathing, which is so important. We need to breathe to live. It is something that happens without us needing to think about it, but it can be very helpful to think about it, because when we get tense, which we talked about earlier, what happens is the breath gets shallow and tends to come up higher into, back up a little, it gets up more into the chest, and you're like, okay, isn't that where you breathe from? Well, not ideally. Ideally, you want to be taking long, slow exhales, all the way into your belly, and then you let that inhale just happen naturally. I found that's a really good way to think about it. So letting the exhale, letting it all out as much as you can, and then you just let that inhale arise naturally, and just checking in. It's an easy thing to do throughout the day, or when you're on court, is how is my breathing? Is it tense or is it relaxed? And as an interesting experiment, like, if you want to just try like squeezing your fists like really hard for a moment, just like squeeze it, lots of tension. All right, how's your breathing? Nice and deep. No,
Right.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
And then just take that deep exhale, see what happens to your fists, and see if you can you do both at the same time? So I'm going to do a nice deep exhale. It's like impossible. I can't do both at the same time. So taking deep breaths, even just a few, just
And
a
it's,
couple of minutes.
yeah, I love that.
Powerful.
And it's the same thing. I'll use a pickleball paddle this time. If you grip really tight or make a fist, try to relax your shoulder. It doesn't, so your shoulder is the main hinge, right, for a swing of a racket, a paddle, a bat, whatever. Try swimming in a pool with fists. See how you're going to do.
Yeah, it's good. That's awesome.
So yeah, those are my. I think that was 3. So
That's good. That's good. I feel like you were, speaking about my serve game, because it all starts in that sequence. A couple of those, not, that didn't go too well. Then you start talking to yourself, because the serves are worse, because you got that moment where you're not in the action. You got to control those thoughts, and yeah, it can go down. Actually, a little.
So
I was going to say, there's a little, I used to play with a guy, and he would do this trick to me. And every time I was serving well, he would stop. He'd be like, wow, Billy, you're serving so well. And as soon as he said that, it was like, don't do that to me. Because you start thinking, even just again, because even not that you're not saying something positive, but now you're not present. You're starting to think, oh, wow, that was a good shot. That was that. And just that little distraction would change the way that the sequence that you've been in, the flow, as Joe had mentioned, that you were in, like a disruption to the flow.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, since you brought up the serve, one quick tip that I found that helps me a lot, because it's so true. You have all this time to think, and it's very easy to think your way into a mistake. So when you're getting ready to serve, and it might be a little hard to demo, so I'll just talk through it. But you're in the ready position. That's why a lot of players like to have some kind of ritual, and I'll speak to this moment. Like, they might bounce the ball once or 3 times. It's like an anchor to help you center yourself. And then something that's really helpful that ties in with the breath is, before we get to that, another little tip, just making sure that if you're a righty, your right hand is relaxed. So, you have your racket in your left hand, or your non-dominant hand, and then just take your dominant hand off the grip. You can just like lift the fingers off for a moment. Thanks, Joe. Just to check in that you don't have a death grip on it, because that's not a great way to start. And okay, make sure you're relaxed. And then right before you're going to begin the motion, take a deep exhale, like we just talked about. Let all the air out. And then inhale as you're about to start your motion, because you want your movement synchronized with your breath. So what'll happen is you exhale and then you inhale, and you'll exhale again as you hit.
Oh, that's
That'll
good.
give that extra power, and that's why, you know, players sometimes make what's called like a grunting noise. It doesn't have to be Sharapova level, but just an exhale. It doesn't even have to be an audible one. Like, you know, if you've watched Roger Federer play, you never really heard him. But the synchronization of breathing with motion is very, very powerful. Same idea with the serve and pickleball. You can still, you know, check in, check your grip strength, take your fingers off. It's not as common to do the ball bouncing with pickleball, but you know, you could experiment with it, or just take an exhale breath and then go for it.
So I have a quick little story. When Kalindi was 11, 12, 13, 14, she would often accompany me to tennis conventions where I would speak. And so I was presenting and she was demonstrating. And it was interesting that we just switched roles. She was explaining a concept, and here I was trying to give a visual to go along with it.
That's awesome.
So I think that is the role with parents and their kids, you know, the role reversal thing. And Lindy, I think I can say this and get away with it because you're not that old yet, but she is actually 29. So if I say in 3 years, how's a 29-year-old doing? You'll know that I'm fibbing. So she is actually, you know, it's 15 years ago, give or take, that we were doing that, and the roles have now started to reverse. So I love it.
That's awesome. You know, I just kind of feel like, especially with what you just did, Kalindi, maybe we should just move into that mindfulness now. I'm just going to switch our agenda up a little bit. I thought that would be a good thing to segue into.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, this exercise is to help with that self-critical voice that can whisper in our ear. It's called a self-compassion break. And, you know, I think especially, you know, athletes, and then if we're talking about the tennis and pickleball industries and coaches, there's a male dominance, which may have the tendency to self-compassion, like what kind of woo-woo hippie nonsense are you trying to, you know, throw at me? So I'll just give a little bit of an explanation of mindful self-compassion and the scientific basis of it. So like mindfulness, which of course has been around for many hundreds and hundreds of years, and, you know, it came to the West and then it has become more popularized, especially with modern technology and science, and looking at brain scans and the impacts of mindfulness to, you know, help with reducing anxiety and even chronic pain and all kinds of benefits. So mindful self-compassion has all of those same benefits. It was developed by two, you know, individuals in the field who wanted to add that extra, who saw the need for that extra element of it, you know, and has just a whole host of benefits: improved focus, well-being, you know, decreased anxiety, depression. Like it just is a overall, you know, holistic benefit, which can help on or off the court. So a self-compassion break is something you can do very, you know, very quickly in a short amount of time. So even on a, you know, changeover on the court, and it's just a way to check in with yourself and give yourself a little bit of self-kindness, just kind of like how you might, you know, pep up your doubles partner if they're feeling down. It's something you can do for yourself. So I think the best way to get a feel for this is if I'll take you through it. So go ahead and just, you know, find a nice comfortable spot and let all your air out on a nice exhale, and then let that inhale arise naturally. And you can go ahead and close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or take a soft, unfocused gaze in front of you. And now I'd like you to bring to mind a recent experience that, may have caused you some distress or discomfort. It doesn't have to be, crazy intense. So, maybe on a 1 to 10 scale, if 10 was one of the most, painful experiences of your life and 0 is you're going for a lovely stroll in the park, maybe pick something around a 5. So just something that caused a little bit of discomfort. And, bring that experience to mind. So just see if you can, relive it a little bit, bring to mind, what it felt like, how you felt, the emotions that came up. Notice, where you're feeling that in your body, in your mind. And now the first step in the self-compassion break is simply to recognize that you're having a difficult moment. So you would just acknowledge to yourself, either out loud or just in your head, this is a challenging moment, or this is a moment of suffering, this is a moment of discomfort. Whatever word choice feels right to you. The typical one in the field was, this is a moment of suffering. I personally haven't always resonated with that word, as it seemed like a very intense experience. And so I'll usually pick something like, oh, this was a moment of, maybe discomfort, or this is hard, or anything that acknowledges your experience to yourself. And then the second step is to take a broader perspective with it, and just, think about the fact that there's lots of other people that are also experiencing, their own difficult times, suffering, hardships, discomforts, possibly even a very similar experience to the one you're experiencing. After all, there's many human beings in the world, and we all share a lot of similar experiences. So this is called bringing in common humanity, and it's a reminder to ourselves that we're not alone. When we experience a difficult moment, we tend to go in our own heads and feel like, oh my gosh, I can't, this is like the worst thing. And we're thinking pretty much just of ourselves and not taking that broader perspective. And then finally, the last thing is to give ourselves a little bit of comfort, support, what you would want a friend to give you, or you to give a friend. So, this might be, you could give yourself a little hug, like, which is also can be a nice little gentle stretch. You might, if you're on the court, it might be something as simple as, touching your fingertips together for a moment. There may not even be a touch element involved. You might just, say some kind of positive affirmation to yourself, like, it's going to be okay. It may all be well. Let me just come into the moment, whatever resonates, with you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So you can go ahead and open your eyes up again. And, this kind of I was explaining a lot through it, but, really once you get familiar with it, that kind of practice, you could turn it into a longer meditation, 5, 10, 15 minutes, but it could also be just a quick 30-second check-in anytime you're feeling stressed out. So yeah, how was that for you both?
It's good. I like the idea of being intentional, right? Because sometimes we think of our thoughts that just come at us, right? This is a way for you to kind of almost grab it. I kind of do that sometimes. If I feel like I'm getting some stinking thinking, I'll like, no, I'm going to just take that out like that. And, and then you're intentionally, adding truth and good things on top of it. So it's great.
Yeah.
And letting go of control. That relates a lot to sports, actually, because there's a certain amount of free will where you're controlling, trying to impose yourself in competition, but at the same time, we're not the supreme controller, so therefore we have to let go. Otherwise, we're going to add so much tension and pressure to ourselves that performance will be dramatically affected. We have to, remember that it's just sports, and we're just in life in general, we're just a small speck, infinitely important, yet at the same time very small. So
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Yeah. Thank you, Kalindi. Joe, you had mentioned earlier, a couple products that you developed and, kind of fitting into some of the things we were talking earlier. And you had some, I think you said you're going to talk about the why behind some of these. So I wonder if you wouldn't mind demoing a couple of these products, talking a little bit about maybe how the origin of them, and how people could use them, today and to see improvement in their game.
Yeah, I think we'll start with the simplest one. It has to do with that instruction we talked about, racket back. That's so many millions of tennis players, and no doubt plenty of pickleball players have learned, heard, and been emphatically told, racket back, paddle back, racket back. And then they're taking it, way back as far as they can, as fast as they can. And then the balls, they catch it late, because obviously for the ball speed and where they're at on the court and their own reaction, they took it back too far. Rarely do you take that full of a backswing. Rarely, you're most full. Usually you're adapting in here. So we have a product that one person came up with it, and we happily paid him royalties for many years. We do that with people if they come up with an idea, by the way, that we can't establish as something that we're already in the process of working on. So even if it's not patented, we'll give some royalties or work out something where there's some benefit to that person. And basically it goes around the chest, and stand up just a little bit. And then you put your arm through, right? Through here. We'll go down a little bit. And then what it does, it keeps the arm tucked in, so you can't physically pull it back in here. The other thing that's very old school, and I'll do it lefties, a lot of people were taught to extend their arm out and straighten. So they're swinging like a door. When in fact, taking the racket back requires the elbow to be bent. So this method, right, of strapping you in gives you a kinesthetic guide or feel, whether it's tennis or whether it's pickleball, of keeping a more compact swing and not extending that arm way out there. And like all kinesthetic aids, this is called the arm pocket developer. I think it says it on there. And the process with any kinesthetic aid is to use it 5 to 10 times, let's say, and then take it off and then put it on again and then off again until it transfers that feeling kinesthetically into a pattern, because it's not about telling somebody with words, right? Don't take your racket back too far. It's not about that, because that does not work. That's been proven over and over again, that verbal instructions, at very best, it'll take years to work. When in fact, something like the arm pocket developer, for that person taking their arm straight back, it can work literally in minutes as compared to years to give somebody a feel. I'd say that's, a good use of the cost of a half-hour lesson in a training aid. And if you want to be nice to the coach you work with, give it to the coach as a gift after you're done fixing your own strokes. So that's one of them. Right? So
Joe, I just want to ask you, just so there's clarification. So with that, you put it on, you maybe hit 5 to 10 balls. Is that right? Then you take it off and you do what, another 5 to 10 and kind of alternate in that pattern?
Yeah, it depends on the person. But what you're trying to do is not get dependent upon the aid, right? And think of it a little bit like braces, but easier and less painful. Braces are adjusting, right, your teeth.
Yep.
That's all. It's really that simple. But you don't want to live with braces the rest of your life once your teeth get fixed. Now, some people might say, oh, well, I need a retainer, to maintain it. Well, tennis is a little bit easier than moving people's teeth around.
Right. But I'm sure it is a perishable skill, right? So if you're not all of a sudden using it, or you take a big time off? Sometimes we can kind of revert back to bad habits.
It really depends on the person. Depends how long that habit had been developed for.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, my first lesson was in 1958 at 5 years old. And the standard way to teach then was one grip. You know, there was no real topspin forehand in those days, or at least not commonly taught. And there was one grip and your arm is straight. And that's how we learned to hit. And my forehand, I had to relearn it when I was in, just after college.
I bet.
So now I hit a totally modern style, semi-Western topspin forehand, which I love, but it took going through that. My arm used to be straight. And if you do, let me take the why. So one of the reasons this is problematic, and let's say that you and I are going to play a match, Billy, and we're about the same level, whatever. And in the warm-up, you notice my arm is straight on my forehand, right? And I don't hit much topspin. So that person is going to have two weaknesses. Number one is they're going to have trouble with high balls, because with the straight arm, typically the person is going to hit with an Eastern or a continental grip. And then high balls become very difficult, and they'll end up coming underneath it, and they can float the ball outwards, out of the court, because it's going to go too high. The other thing, which is really easy to do, in the warm-up, if they play like this, then let them warm up, nicely. Like hit the ball slow enough so that they're not having trouble, because you're not hitting it harder and jamming them. And then in the match, on important points, hit the ball at them a little bit faster, whether they're on the baseline or at the net, and their habit's going to be to get out here, and they're going to have a lot of trouble getting inside to hit a ball close once their elbow is locked, obviously. So there are a couple of ways that I just shared to exploit your opponents, and a quick way to fix it, and why. So
that's awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, let's move on to product.
And I have another one, but I'm not sure when you will.
Let's do it. Let's go right into it.
Two training aids to share today.
Let's move right into the second one.
All right. The other aid that we're going to talk about is called the forehand fixer. Now, it's not necessarily only for the forehand. It can work for the volley. It can, help with the backhand a little bit too, in different ways. And all these aids, we have videos on them and instruction manuals that come with all of them and so forth. And again, very, inexpensive. And certainly you can do it many different ways, but I like our forehand fixer mostly because it uses Velcro, which is very safe and sensitive to pressure. And the idea here is that if you're playing with somebody and they do old style, where they have one arm forwards and one arm back, their arms are so separate, they're going to be using their arm as the center of rotation, which is something, it's going to give you something in terms of racket head speed and ball pace, but not very efficient. So you want to use your whole body, and which includes your hips and your shoulders and your legs. It's called the unit turn, and it's called a sequence, kinetic sequence, right? That your body parts are working together, and you can see my left arm has a certain proximity to my hitting hand. So they're working together in a flow rather than apart, where my shoulder is the center of rotation. Here, you can see my shoulders turning, and you'll get a lot more efficiency, less stress on the arm, better hitting, all of that good stuff. So the forehand fixer essentially works simply, and it works like this. So you put it around both wrists, right? And it's just with Velcro, like this. And then if you take it back, right, and you separate your arms, then the Velcro pulls apart and you feel it. So the idea for whether it's pickleball or whether it's tennis is to simply put this on, and when you're hitting your forehand, it stays on. It doesn't disconnect. If I was waiting for a serve and I went like that, it would disconnect and be hanging. So very simple, very, very simple. If it's a backhand, for example, and you're hitting a slice backhand, one-handed backhand, or a topspin, one-handed backhand, then you do want it to split apart. So it's a good way to, because they split for counterbalance. They don't go forwards together like this. They split, and then it comes off as well. So that is the forehand fixer. It's made out of neoprene, just like the arm pocket developer. And, this is a lifetime kind of training aid. You can pass it on to people, use it, fix your forehand, give it to your coach. They don't cost much. Speed up your lessons, speed up your learning, save money on lessons. Kinesthetic training aids are used so much in golf, and in tennis, they're starting to pick up their own momentum.
Yeah. Or for coaches, of course, these types of aids are such a great investment to, help your students improve faster, and then they'll, of course, be more excited. You mentioned from the student perspective, saving money on lessons, and of course, coaches want their students to, to be improving quickly. And also on the flip side, it might make this, the students, assuming they can afford it and they want to keep improving, they're going to see the success and be like, oh, wow, like I haven't been able to fix this in years, but now with this coach, thanks to, utilizing some creative techniques and kinesthetic learning, now I'm actually improving, and they're eager to, to come back for more and take their games, to the next level.
Yeah. And then two more things came in mind just from what you said, Kalindi, which was before, if you're picking a new coach, watch them. Go to the court where they're teaching and watch them. If they're using visual and kinesthetic aids like target systems, and you'll know if they're using them. And that is a better coach, because people learn faster with visual and kinesthetic aids where they're feeling and it's fixing them. And the other thing is, the coaches should never feel threatened by these aids, because A, they're going to get many, many more word of mouth referrals. And B, most coaches teach both private lessons and group lessons and run drills. So these people that are doing private lessons and they're working on these things, right, can then move into the group class and then move into the drill. And it's a way for them to progressively improve and work on that specific challenge that they have. And then the other players, they may bring these to the court and they may mix it up. So that helps spread the word of mouth for that coach, that he is there's no such license as an accelerated learning tennis coach. But I think there should be.
There you go. Well, maybe there's not one yet.
There you go.
There
are many good coaches out there. But if you have a coach who's just talking the whole time, just know that is not the best way to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, there you go.
All right. That's good. Fantastic stuff. Hey, let me pull up some slides real quick. Let's talk about some upcoming products, some new products. I'm going to share my screen here.
Cool.
All right. All right. So let's dive in a little bit here on the multi-court barrier system. I know we briefly mentioned it before, but I think it's been released, right, Kalindi? And love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the last time we chatted about it, it was coming soon, and just thought that, yeah, now that it's in stock, it'd be great to just highlight that. And we're super excited about this product. It's super versatile. So we had a partner of ours, which was actually that was one of the inspirations for the product, because he had a super large pickleball tournament and wanted to use it to create all the barriers around the pickleball court and to guide traffic flow. And he also, I thought it was very creative. He put the, often big tournaments have their sponsor banners, and you have to, where are you going to put the banners, and you have to hang them everywhere. And he hung a lot of them over the multi-court barriers. So, they're sturdy enough to be able to hold up a banner like that, which it could be company banners, but it could also be, someone wants to highlight the logo for their club or event. And yeah, it works great for, for pickleball tournaments or events. It could be used for, any kind of sporting goods event. It could be used for tennis. I could even, imagine some people using it in their backyard to create, if you want to have a little mini net set up, or, our new infinity play system, which we talked about yesterday. And if, of course, the idea is to hit that into the container so it feeds back in. But if you have a kid and they miss and it kind of goes everywhere, that way you're at least keeping it contained.
Exactly.
In your backyard, same with, if you have a rebounder net or anything else, I think this can just be a great way to, create these portable containers. And they're kind of like Lego pieces, because you can create pretty much as many configurations as you can imagine.
Yeah, you
Just
can do
one example with a few of them.
straight lines, corners, T's, and an X going in different direction. That person it was that major national event in Atlantic City, and he rented a large ballroom, and he set up 48 pickleball courts.
Wow.
48, at 6,000 players, something like that. Huge event. It also, looking at these pictures, made me think that if you've got a little puppy or some kittens that you want to contain, a litter of puppies or kittens, you can make a little square and you can use them that way. They're also 34 inches high, which works well for kids with tennis. A tennis net regularly is 36 inches. This is a little less, and it is the exact same height as a pickleball regulation net at 34 inches. So very affordable, very flexible, very adaptable. It made me think of Kalindi being, when she started to walk as a little kid. This is what you get when you have a parent and father-daughter. We put furniture around the circle that was soft, so she could walk around. So you could actually do that for kids too, because the netting is soft, and put them in a little playpen in the backyard using your barrier systems. So
it's awesome.
Many different uses, but primarily it was meant to, when you set up a court in a parking lot or in a gymnasium or wherever, to create a barrier around so the balls don't go everywhere into the crowd.
That's awesome. Yeah, great product, very versatile. Awesome.
Yeah, it's a neat, I've seen it, I play table tennis also, and it's that's such a common thing to use for that. Usually more with like the foam flexible,
but same concept.
Same concept, because who wants, it's more, I think with tennis or pickleball, people think, oh, you have a court that's already set up with, your fencing and all of that. But especially for pickleball, there's so much grassroots pop-up courts where you don't necessarily have that. Like actually at the table tennis club that I go to, which is it's like a gymnasium setup. So you have the, the workout equipment, and then we pull out the ping pong tables and then set up the barriers so that you're not chasing the balls into the workout equipment. And it's actually pretty funny because there's always a pickle net deluxe watching us from the stand. So they have pickleball there too. So it's the kind of thing where, you want to not
very
have
common, very common. I mean, the next training aid, I believe, is our well, we'll wait for it, and then you'll understand, Billy, what goes on in recreation centers all around the country.
Right. Yeah. Even as you were saying it, again, just even multiple home uses. I think of like my son playing basketball in the driveway, right? And putting something at the end of the driveway that stops the balls from rolling in the street, which I'm always can't stand. Let the ball go. Let the ball go. Let the ball go. Get it later, But having something like that, again, just many uses. Yep, it's a great product.
Smart. Yeah.
Great,
Good. They're
great
8 feet long, by the way.
Wow,
Each unit.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very versatile. So yeah, so Joe,
Oh,
you
the
teed
rolling
up
net.
the next product here, the rolling net. Talk to us a little bit about this product.
Yeah, so, for those of us that have been, loyal customers and partners over the years, of course, you'll remember the Roll-A-Net. It's not a new product, but it is a very exciting new and improved product because we've taken what was already a very popular, product that everybody loved, and we thought, hey, our net systems are one of the items that we really have. We have our patents on them, and we really try and make them the, industry leading standards. So we wanted to, take our Roll-A-Net to the next level. So it's now made with our patented oval poles, which makes it easier to set up, more durable, higher quality. It also, we added in, so you might recall, our pickle net deluxe, we added in some aluminum into the design, so it's now a hybrid steel and aluminum design. We did the same thing with our Roll-A-Net to make the weight a little bit lighter, so it's easy to carry around, a little bit lighter for shipping, and it just has those hybrid benefits. We found through extensive testing that that there's some nets out there that are all aluminum, but those did not hold up to our quality control standards. The aluminum was just a little bit too light and too soft, but mixing the steel and the aluminum together, we found to be the best of both worlds, where you have durability of the steel with the, the lightness and versatility of the aluminum. And of course, the Roll-A-Net still does, it's an awesome portable net that works for tennis, or you can raise the poles up, and play, badminton in the backyard, or volleyball, or anything like that, or it can be used as a training aid, much like we have our air zone system. So you can just lift it up and then practice hitting over the net, or under the net for slice shots. Joe, you want to add in anything there? Maybe share
you did great, Billy. If you don't have more pictures handy, maybe we go to our website.
Yeah, let me pull it up.
Screen share, because the other pictures really say a lot. But the oval tubing, the main benefit of that, as many people know, is when you're using round tubing in portable nets, the nets get out of alignment very easily because the tube just twists. And the oval tubing ensures that it will stay in alignment, stay straight, and not require any adjustments once it's set up.
Thanks, Billy.
Yeah, no problem.
So there's the higher level.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's about 60 inches. There's the lower level. And you notice it's on 5 wheels. The outside 4 wheels are locking wheels. So once you move it into place, you just secure it by pushing down on the lever with your foot. And then when you're ready to move it to store it or take it apart, you just take the brake off and you're ready to roll it back. So this is very common, very popular. That's the oval tubing and the Velcro tension adjuster, but very popular for indoor court facilities to add another net for people to use, or for gymnasiums, or for any facility that's got a large area and needs a portable net. Really, this is tennis length at 18 feet, whereas pickleball portable nets are 22 feet. But obviously, it can be used for multiple purposes. Just wouldn't be used for pickleball tournament play. That's what our pickle net deluxe does.
And it comes in a nice bag to easily be able to store it, put it together. And these nets are designed to be as quick and easy to set up as possible. So we've done some fun videos with some of our different portable nets, and our good friend Emma Doyle of timing how long does it take to set up our nets, and it's like under 3 minutes. It's quite, and that's with one.
Once you're used to it, really, it's well under a minute. And the duffel bag has 2 wheels, so you just lift and roll. It's super easy, and there's room enough for other equipment to be put in, a racket bag inside there or whatever.
Fantastic.
And one other point from the, if we recall the picture where it was fully set up, there's that little bit of space under the bottom holes. And speaking of Emma, made me remember this because she said she really loved that particular design because she'll do drills with little kids where they have to roll the ball underneath that. So I just wanted to mention that because not all nets will have that kind of design.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great product. Yeah, there's the wheels. Looks really well made.
These bags are great bags. I've used them in our Pickle Methalux bag, just to go to events and, have it as a bag, and I put other items in them because they're just good rolling duffel bags on wheels.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, great products. All right. Well, we're about to close up the episode, but I wanted to close today with Joe getting a chance to share another poem from his one of his published poetry books. Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm always
have to keep track. One day we'll have to keep track of which ones I'm reading because I do it like this.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a nice one. So a dear friend of mine did the illustrations, and you can see the illustrations are playing cards with a crown at the top of a ladder, and the cards are competing to see who can get to be king. So the name of this poem, and I'll show that picture at the end, is called Hearts of Cards. So let me give it a quick read. It's very short. So if we can focus for under 30 seconds, everyone will be able to hear. Hearts of Cards. Some hearts soft, most cards hard. We're all unique, oblique, with subtle mystique. Decks reflect the world's deluge. Competing cards each sing, I just want to be king. While humble, outnumbered, ever patient, patience are living past pretense and peaceful, knowing that selfless love yields true strength, while self-anointed kings learn they do not have wings, and it wasn't a game after all. So pretty self-explanatory, but you've got a couple of cards. He illustrated so nicely, holding hands, being patient, observing the others, competing with their egos, pushing each other off the ladder, trying to raise to a position of control at the top of the wall and wear the crown. And yet these two are the only ones smiling, and they're holding hands and experiencing life with affection, humility, patience, gratitude, all those good things we all look for.
That's fantastic. I would say those are things that I think OnCourt OffCourt and both you, Joe, and Kalindi exude as well. So I appreciate you sharing that and taking the time today for another Game Changers. So everyone go to OnCourtOffCourt.com. There you can see the products we mentioned. There's also links to a bunch of free trainings, the blog. There's so much content. I've always really been impressed with how much you have all focused on creating quality content to not just, sell a product, but to really impart knowledge, wisdom, skills, trainings, and, that altruistic, time and development and teaching, I think, is a real foundation of OnCourt OffCourt. So you guys can check all of that stuff out there. Joe, Kalindi, thank you again so much for the time.
YouTube channel.
Yeah, check out the YouTube channel. And
it's all free.
We're
up to, I don't know, about a year or two ago, I added up the number of views, and we were approaching 5 million total.
Wow.
Of course, we have hundreds and hundreds, and that may seem like not that much compared to a lot of, there's single YouTube videos with millions and millions of views. But for our little niche market with coaches and tennis players and athletes and fitness people and yoga people and pickleball people, we're happy with those numbers. But all free, lots of good content. Playlists are well organized. And thanks to you, Billy, for helping keep everything together with us.
Oh, well, you guys make it easy. So I appreciate working with you guys, appreciate the time. And yeah, thanks again for another Game Changers. So we'll see everybody on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Kalindi. Thanks, Billy.